Hello folks, and welcome to day 24 of my 90-day challenge. And today was a bed and breakfast changeover day. I had a nice couple from Taiwan in for breakfast this morning, and I still managed, because it's Sunday, to attend the online Toastmasters meeting, the Firebirds Collective. So I did a little run around the garden, and here's a little b-roll of what my garden is looking like now. Then I thought would be a nice idea today would be to show you how I edit my photos. Now I use Aperture, which is the Apple photo editing program, which used to be the de facto standard, but it's been superseded, or sidelined rather, and replaced by an inferior product. So I continue using Aperture even though it's no longer supported. So let's just jump straight into it. So here we are with the images that I'm going to play with, and I've chosen this one up here to edit. Now we're in Aperture, which is the professional photo manipulation program that Apple used to have, but they've gone away from it unfortunately, and they've replaced it with something which is somewhat inferior. However, I press H to bring up my inspector, and the first thing I do is to go down to levels, and I click the auto button in the channel luminance, and I then look and see what is done. Now it's clipped my whites a little bit more than I want, but the blacks look about okay. Now what I am going to do is to look at this full screen, so click there. And there we have it full screen. So let's look at it as it was originally. That's as it was taken. So that's now. So that's brought up the grass very nicely. And we don't need to do a huge amount of this, but I'm going to put in an S curve into the image. Let's click it off, before and with. So that's already improved it substantially. Now I could either leave it at that, and it's not bad, I have to say, for a start, or I could take it into my external editor, which is Photoshop, and we'll see if we can make this any better. Now there are odd things I might do as well later, but we'll look at selective levels in Photoshop. So let's wait for Photoshop to load. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I'm now going to do selective levels. So I'm going to choose the lasso tool, okay, and we'll start off with the deer herself, and I'm going to do a rough outline. I'm not too worried about being 100% accurate, just want to be near enough. Okay. Now I've got 25. Now we need to pick up a bit more of the animal there. I'm now going to feather it. I'm going to do quite a big feather, probably about 150. Yeah, that looks quite good. Now I'm going to do levels, which is Command L. We could do it as a layer. So if we do a layer via copy, We don't need to cut it. So we'll do a layer via copy, and then we'll do the levels on the layer, right? So that's just the same, but what this does is it gives us the opportunity to go back and manipulate that. And I can also dial in the amount that I want to have of that just by moving the opacity slider. At the moment we'll leave it at 100%. Because we go back to the background and we'll now select the grass. And we don't want to go too much into the deer. Now I'm going to click on that item, and that means that I can now add to the selection. So you see I'm not being hugely accurate, but just accurate enough. Okay, again I'm going to go for about 150 feather. Yep, feather 150. And we'll do the same again. We'll do layer, new, layer via copy, which is Command J. We now have our layer 2, and I think we'll actually call that grass, and we'll call layer 1 the deer. It helps for identifying later on. So selecting the grass, and I'll do layers on that, and again will be a similar thing of bringing in a bit of the, we don't want to overdo it, but on the other hand we can always, as I say, dial it down if we don't like it. And maybe we've slightly clipped a bit too much there. Okay, so that's that. And the only thing we have left now as a discrete area is the water. So we'll select the water, and again we'll feather to 150, should be enough. And as before, layer new, layer via copy, Command L. Alright, so we can bring the whites in quite a long way there. Bring the blacks in a little bit. It's making very little difference to the middle bit, so we might look at the middle bit as a separate exercise. Okay, but overall I'm quite happy with that. Now if I want to change the balance a little bit, I can take each layer and dial the opacity down a little bit to play with it to see if we get something we like. And at the end of the day, if we don't like something, we can always adjust it. So that's about it. I'm going to send it back to Aperture by just saving it, Command S, and that should take me back to Aperture with, here we go. Now we should see a second version of this. Okay, so if we go up to the browser, there we are, that's the original, and that's the revision to it. So look at that full screen. Now that's looking very nice. Now I'm going to add another couple of adjustments. I'm going to put an edge sharpen on, and what that does is it just picks up the edges and makes the edges more defined. And we'll look at putting a vignette on, because that sometimes helps to draw the eye in more into the center of the image. Don't want to overdo it too much, just a little bit. Okay, that's good. And I don't think we need to make any other adjustments. That's it, we're done. That's how I do my edits. And that was, I was going to say quick and dirty, that was fairly quick and fairly dirty, let's put it that way, because we only had 3 areas to play with. Now you might say that the adjustments that we did in those 3 areas were very similar. They were, but we were looking at them as individuals, and as a result what we did was specific to that particular bit. Now I can also add brushes, probably a lot easier in Photoshop. If we go back to Photoshop and zoom in on that eye, put him central. Come on, zoom, that's it. Then what we could do there is select the eye like so. The feather, the 25 feather that we've got in there is probably about right. So brighten that eye up and take the midtones down towards the blacks. How do we like that? I think we like that a lot. Deselect, take it back, and now we have a much brighter eye, and I think we quite like that. Again, I could have done that by adding a layer, which would allow me to dial it back in. In fact, let's do that. Let's go back to the lasso and select, no, where are we? Layer, new layer via copy, J, and levels on that layer. Okay, done it mainly with the midtones. Now, if I switch that layer off, you'll see the effect. I think we've probably slightly overdone it, so I'm going to dial it down to about 50%. I think that looks good. Save that again and go back to Aperture, and that should be reflected in the Aperture. Yes. Okay. So that's it. I hope you've found that useful, and you'll come back tomorrow and watch tomorrow's video. That's all for today, so I'll bid you good night.